Hello YouTube, welcome to my next channel video, and this video is going to be something I've wanted to talk about for a while. It's going to be on the classic Universal monster movies, how I got into them and stuff like that. So I started to get into the classic Universal monster movies around, I want to say 2003. They put out I was at a local store and they had like VHS tapes and stuff like that. And I came across the Wolfman. And I bought it. And it was actually my dad that encouraged me to buy it because I wasn't too sure on buying it and whatnot. But it was my dad that encouraged me to buy it. So we bought it, brought it home, actually watched it that night. And before it, I always remember this ad for the Universal Monster movies. It pretty much like showed like the movies and whatnot, which kind of that was my other introduction to all the other ones. And so watched the Wolfman, fell in love with it. Actually, it did creep me out, especially for an older movie. But Lon Chaney Jr. is the Wolfman. He was perfect casting for the Wolfman, kind of following in the footsteps of his father, Lon Chaney Sr. from the silent movie era. He was most famous for the Phantom of the Opera and Hunchback of Notre Dame. And actually, Lon Chaney Sr. was originally supposed to play Dracula in the first sound film, the first sound Dracula film. But unfortunately, he had died from lung cancer before that. And then Bela Lugosi got the role, which is perfect. He is the perfect Dracula, in my opinion, Bela Lugosi. He played Dracula on stage, so it was a natural transition for him. But not too long after I got the VHS tape of the Wolfman, they started coming out with the DVD legacy collections with all the Dracula films, all the Wolfman films, or werewolf films, because there was only 2 Wolfman films, and in that it had She-Wolf of London and Werewolf of London, which are pretty good, but She-Wolf of London it wasn't that great. I got all of them except for The Invisible Man, because I didn't really care much about The Invisible Man, but I had Dracula Legacy Collection, Frankenstein, The Mummy, and The Wolfman. Those 4 are the ones that I got, because in my opinion, those are the 4 main monster movies that made Universal great for the monster movies anyway. So I got those. Then as they were pretty much put out to promote Van Helsing coming out, which it was 2004. Van Helsing came out, so which worked out because Van Helsing had almost all the classic monster movies, or monsters anyway. Mainly Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman, and he had Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but that was only really a cameo. But I'll always remember watching those movies. I still obviously watch them. There's just such a different feel to those movies compared to movies nowadays. It's like the original Dracula. It was the first sound film, so they didn't think to put music into it. Now there is a version where it does have music, but the music fits well, but there's never really a pause. The music actually plays a little too loud over the dialogue, so it's kind of good and kind of bad. But the original didn't have any music at all, so it had this weird kind of like dream feeling to it, which worked perfectly for the mood at that time. the eras for the Universal monster movies that I kind of noticed is from the original kind of series is from 1931 to 1935, which is um, considered the golden age of monster movies of Universal, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. And then the second half is from 1937 to 1941, which is considered the Silver Age. And then 1942 to like 1950 is like the Bronze Age or whichever they called it. But I'll always love these movies. I always go and watch them whenever I get the chance to. Um, I'll list my personal favorite ones. My favorite ones are The Wolfman, because that's the first one that I watched. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, which is technically the first kind of versus movie. Um, the original 1931 Dracula. I know people like the Spanish version better, but I don't really care much for it. The original Frankenstein is great. Um, Bride of Frankenstein is great, and Son of Frankenstein. But other than that, this is just my video on the Universal Classic Monster movies. I'll catch you next time, YouTube.